You have reached the Geek Elite. Good luck.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen,
And I am Matt, aka Stormageddon.
and on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there, so we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
Welcome back to another episode of VHS Gems, the Geek Elite Media podcast in which we open up the treasure box of nostalgia video cassette films from our childhoods and deem whether or not they are the shiny, sparkly diamonds as we remember, or whether or not they're lumps of coal that, like, should go away forever and be destroyed or something. This is Jessica of Geek Elite, and joining with me is John.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about the 1986 film Short Circuit.
Oh, I thought we were going to watch Not Quite Human.
Not Quite Human. Oh, I don't know about that.
It's
Honestly,
a Disney.
Is it Disney? The Disney 80s ones and 70s ones, I'm not good on. There's so many, but especially their sci-fi ones. But
Yeah, it was kind of bad, actually.
was it? Well, it's either really, really good, okay, or really bad if it's a Disney film.
Yeah, there's a reason you haven't heard of it or are not familiar with it.
Yeah,
Probably.
I'd believe that. Short Circuit is a fairly, I would say it's a well-known film of our gems. It's not.
It wasn't popular enough to be like a mainstream hit, but it wasn't like unknown enough to be a cult classic. It's like in this weird middle ground where it was just like good or okay.
It was an 80s sci-fi film. That's I apparently got it confused with another film in my head because I thought it had a kid in it as the lead. Like he ran into a kid, not a woman who owned a bunch of animals. Like I thought it was a kid that made Short Circuit. Well, made number five and Sentient.
Yeah, there's no shortage of 80s movies that feature a child and a robot.
That is
But
fair.
this was not that one.
Yeah. Well, I feel bad because apparently it's one of my mom's favorite movies from the 80s. And she doesn't like a ton of sci-fi too. So it's kind of surprising. So she wanted to make sure she watched it with me. And then also I made my dad watch it with us too. So made it a family affair this time.
Well, it's a nice family movie with some slightly risque humor, which now I'm like, oh yeah, like that this shows some bad influences starting to sprout in 6-year-old
Just-
me when this came out.
just a little bit. But I think that is a lot for the movies of like older times, like 80s and 70s, is you look at their rating and it's like just PG. But if they did the ratings for it now, it would be like rated R.
Yeah,
some
16
of
Candles
them.
has like full-on boobs in it. I'm like, whoa,
Mhm.
that was interesting.
You just need a little parental guidance for that. It's
Yeah,
fine. Boobs.
like your mom has to be there to like cover your eyes, and make
Yeah.
things even more weird.
Maybe that's what it was in the 80s. It was like, how long does mom need to cover the kid's eyes? And that's what will determine where it's
You
at.
know, I remember seeing a poster, like a cartoon poster, that's supposed to give you an idea of what the ratings mean. So G has like a baby, a child, like a teenager, a mom, and like an old person, like all sitting in a row.
Hmm.
And then PG-13, the two little kids are gone, and you have like a teenage-looking kid with the parent next to them, and so
Yeah.
on. I think it was a joke picture though, because it does go all the way into like the triple X rating, and then it just has like just people in like cloaks, or basically
People in cloaks.
like
Yeah,
trench
that sounds
coats.
like a joke. But interesting. And I'm sure the rules of it change all the time. But yeah, we watched 1986 Short Circuit film about a robot that goes through a short circuit and becomes sentient and says, "I'm alive," like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah,
But
there's references to Frankenstein's monster in this movie and in the sequel. And my daughter called this movie Tall Wally.
Tall Wally. Oh, he does make me think of Wally, and I love Wally.
Well, he's
So
got those really expressive large eyes. That's why it's
yeah,
probably very...
I'm
And
wondering
treads.
if it was intentional to make Wally look kind of like Short Circuit, at least with the eyes, because
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if the people involved in making Wally were influenced by this movie as children and were like, someday I'm going to make my own Short Circuit.
yep,
And that's usually what happens too. And, a lot of
Yeah.
works is the previous generation gets inspired by something and then they make their own version of it.
yep. So, anything you want to say before we dig into the plot a little?
Yes, this movie popularized the song Who's Johnny by El DeBarge.
Who's Johnny?
And my name being John, kids would really just think that they were clever by always telling me, "Hey, who's Johnny?"
Oh,
And I was like, "Ah, ha, ha, yeah, from the movie. I get it." So that was the only downside to this film, I think, is just the association of the name and people thinking they were clever.
I would just start singing it anytime anybody said it, like just really obnoxiously.
Yeah. I thought the video was cool, though. It's like a courtroom, and I think they have Ali Sheedy in it as
Yeah,
her character from the movie.
and I think the security guy,
Schroeder.
Schroeder. There we go. He had a name that was kind of like weird to say, like it feels like a
Well,
bad word.
The not Indian guy, played by Fisher Stevens, calls him scrotum at one point. I was like, that's why they have him like that, because they needed to make that joke.
Yeah, that's true. And we probably should also mention that, as you kind of sort of mentioned just now, that there is a Indian character played by Kevin Keith something. Where is it?
Fisher Stevens.
Totally off. Fisher Stevens. Kevin. Jeez, how great are you with names? Horrible.
Well, Kevin was one of the names that Johnny Five considered for himself at the end. So that's probably why it was in your mind.
Maybe that's what it was. So it was an Indian character played by Fisher Stevens, which, if you can't tell from that name, is a white man.
This is his second appearance on VHS Gems, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he also played a stereotypical Italian New Yorker in My Science Project.
Shut up.
That was him.
Oh my gosh. So this white dude is just...
He'd be totally canceled today, yeah.
Because that character was completely over the top Italian stereotype as well, like thick.
I was like, hey, what you got over here? What's going on? Hey.
Yeah, and in this one, I did see on the Wikipedia page, because that's just all I generally feel I need to look at. He had to wear contacts over his blue eyes, and they even darkened his skin.
That you can tell.
To play
that
this role, and you can tell, and it's. I'm like, oh.
You know what though? And this may be racist, so I'm prepared for the backlash on this.
You're gonna get canceled. Don't get us canceled. I like this podcast.
But his hair is on point. I was like, that looks like the haircut that an Indian dude would have.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's very stereotypical, very, very stereotypical. Just the way he talks too. And it was honestly one of the first things my dad said while watching it was like, "Hey, that guy's not really an Indian." And I was like, "Gee, I wouldn't know by the very horribly thick fake accent. That's just so stereotypical. Clearly, this must be actually played by a white male." Like,
You know, that there's I like to think that racism works on certain levels. Like obviously by the time we got to the 1960s, blackface was considered very taboo at that point. But yet here into
yeah,
the
but yet
80s.
white men still often did it at
Oh, well,
parties
yeah,
and got in
but
trouble with it when they became politicians later on. But
yeah,
yes,
well, I mean that's why you shouldn't be doing that in the first place.
yeah,
But I felt like even though we were starting to get more progressive with Africans, we weren't quite there yet with like the Indians because we still had these very stereotypical. I mean, Hank Azaria voiced Apu on The Simpsons until very recently, like only within the last few years, I think. And at that point, I mean, we've had 3 decades of The Simpsons before somebody was like, "Hey, maybe that's not a good idea."
yeah. Maybe it's not. Maybe you should just get somebody who actually has the voice to do the character, or the look to do the character,
That's
or the
that's
culture to do the character. If
that's
you
kind
can,
of what they're saying.
especially
Yeah,
in nowadays, especially if you can. Like, there's really like nowadays with the amount of actors that we have that are pretty decent. Like, there's no reason to not get somebody from the culture that you're filming about,
yeah, and
or at
there's
least
no
close to that culture. Like,
there is no shortage of Indian actors. Bollywood is like incredibly huge.
it's so
So
huge. I'm gonna start watching Bollywood shows and
there's some
movies.
cool stuff. I got
Some really cool
interested in
stuff.
Bollywood with Ghost World when they had that one song in the intro. I was like, "What is this craziness?" And then I saw the video for it from the movie it's from. I was like, "Dude, this
Mm.
is crazy cool." I was like, "This is like had like a totally Tarantino vibe because all the musicians have those little black masks like the Crazy 88s do."
Oh yeah.
And
Hmm.
yeah, it's John Pei Chang Ho, I think is what that one's called. And I
Interesting.
remember that only because it was also in a Heineken commercial. For some reason, they
Mm.
had it in the original language, and then they redid it with English lyrics that
Okay.
were terrible. I was like, "Oh, this sucks." This is probably some dumb people complain like, "Why are you using this song with lyrics we don't understand?" And they're
Onto the
like, "Well, we
dubs.
already paid for the rights to the music. We might as well just reuse it and just put like English lyrics." And it's
Gross.
bad. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, dubs are not. No.
But yes, on to the
Play
plot of the
music.
movie.
Onto the plot of the movie. I just didn't want to like brush over that there was
Yeah, some brown face.
brown face. Yes. All right. So Nova Laboratory, which Nova, which has the scientist Newton Crosby, played by, I really wish I had the names next to it,
Steve Gutenberg.
Steve Gutenberg, which was one of my crushes from Police Academy. I love Steve Gutenberg. He's so cute. He's also in a film with Kirsten Dunst for a Disney Channel original movie, The Tower of Terror. And I absolutely love that Disney Channel original movie. So, in case you're wondering, but yeah, I do like him. I don't know if he was well casted for this though, because I feel like he's too charismatic to play a character that supposedly hates people. But
Yeah, he right off the bat, he seems like a really affable kind of person, and he's all saying like, "I don't like talking to these people and brushing elbows with the bigwigs or whatever. I just want to
yeah,
work on my computer stuff." I was like, "No,
yeah,
you look
no,
like
you.
you would love to be schmoozing with everyone in there."
I know, right? Like, like you're saying these things, you're not showing these things, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he has a sense of humor too. He teaches his robot to flip off the Indian guy.
Yep.
And it's like,
Yeah.
come on, somebody
Yeah.
who's
Well, I mean, not liking people doesn't mean you can't have a sense of humor, but but I was more thinking like the way they were describing this character, which I mean, you really wouldn't know a lot, but he was almost like autistic spectrum, kind of like from the description of it, like doesn't like social, like it seemed like being in social settings gives him anxiety. Like before you
yeah,
even meet him, you get this line from Ben Harvey that he's already throwing up at the thought of seeing people or something like that. There's something said kind of like that. And but then you meet him and he's just like, it seems more like he just doesn't want to deal with the politics of it, as opposed to actually getting anxiety from being in crowds of people.
Yeah, it looks like it's more he doesn't approve that the technology is being used for warfare. He just likes the technology for the sake of its own advancement.
Yeah.
But he looks down on his supervisor and on the military because they're like, you're taking all this cool technology, you just want to use it for death, basically.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't get that deep into it, but that's essentially like his objection.
That's essentially it. Like, it really doesn't get that deep into the human characters. It does get pretty deep into our robot number 5, who is coming up. So Newton Crosby built these robots called SAINT, Strategic Artificial Intelligent Nuclear Transport. I don't know why nuclear is in there, because it was like lasers.
Well, they mentioned in the little meeting that they have with the little like after party when they got rained out.
Mm-hmm.
That general guy is talking about how, like, imagine after your airstrike, clears the area, you send in one of these guys with a nuclear warhead right up to like Main Street of Moscow or something. So I guess they are meant to deliver.
I guess they are delivery.
Yeah.
Ding
Like
dong,
literally like hand
bomb.
it over like a parcel or something.
Here you go.
But it is interesting that they show them with this incredibly sophisticated laser system, which, side note, a little bit of trivia, the sound effect for the laser is the same sound for the proton packs from Ghostbusters.
Ooh.
So that was, it makes sense because they were both TriStar Columbia movies. So I was like, okay, they probably just reused their assets. Probably why we also have 2 Police Academy actors in this. That's a whole different thing. But anyway, yeah, I was thinking, why waste all your time and money with the robot part of this? Those lasers look like they're pretty like good to go. Just
like, why not just stick them on an armband on some soldier and just ping, ping.
Literally,
like, you're just taking out things left and right.
It's like you're making Ghostbuster proton packs, but having to also build a robot to carry it around. I was like, no, put that on a backpack and have a soldier carry it. Like, what's wrong with you guys?
Yeah, what's wrong with you? Just have a soldier do it. No, must get the robots, because robots cost money. And
robots need to happen.
Yep, robots need to happen. Please, Tesla, stop working on your smart robots.
Yeah, I just saw that today, literally before we started recording, and I'm like, why? Why is this a thing?
Why is this a thing? Which,
you know what? Side note, if you see those Boston Dynamic videos of how they started training those like 4-legged robots to like learn to walk, and at first they look like baby deer, like they can barely keep themselves straight, and then as they start getting more advanced over the years, like this has been going on for like well over 10 years now, I think. You see like the people testing them, they're like kicking them over and knocking them with stuff to see how sturdy they are. Like, those robots are going to remember all this.
They're going to remember this.
They're going to come back one day like, remember when you used to kick me around?
Remember?
And they're going to have perfect balance, and like you won't even be able to tip them over anymore. They're going to like take revenge. That's what's going to happen. Robots don't forget.
I know. I think that way. Like, robots don't forget. But I'm also that type of person that apologizes to the table when I bump into it. So
they'll leave you for last.
So yeah, it starts out with them showing 5 of these Saint robots doing a typical display of we can blow stuff up to a crowd of senators and military people, and I assume a little bit of press. But also it can make you a perfect gin and tonic, made just the way the owner of this person, I don't even remember his name. What was the owner?
Marner, something like that?
Marner, yeah.
Yeah, Marner.
Just the way he likes it.
Shaken, not stirred. So I'm guessing that was a James Bond reference.
I know, which that drove me nuts because you don't shake or even stir a gin and tonic. So I was like, which is where you'll get like the best eye roll from, where it's just like you don't even shake or stir a gin and tonic.
There's combination involved. Like
you pour it and you drink it, and that's maybe you stir it yourself a little bit if you like it to be more even balanced, but generally you don't have to. But anyway.
I was like, why?
As they all go inside to talk the things of whether or not they're going to approve Saint for military use, there is a really random lightning storm that comes out of, I think, nowhere. It seems like, because it goes away pretty quickly too, and it hits the place that the robots are all charging at, and number 5 gets short circuited, I guess is what that's called, where you just get electrified as a robot.
Well, I mean, I feel like it would have been more technically accurate to call it power surge instead of short circuit, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, I guess technically the lightning bolt overfried his systems, and I think what we're supposed to take away from it, and it kind of happens later on more specifically, is that he overrides, because they are supposed to be artificially intelligent. So
Yeah, which is
that's
never a good idea.
Yeah, I'm taking it that that's supposed to mean that they can kind of come up with tactics on the fly, and they learn.
Uh-huh.
So I'm assuming what we're supposed to take away from this, if you really look into it, is that this took away whatever governor or like software block they had to not think too much.
Yeah.
And therefore it kind of reset him, and now his AI was like, that's why he was like input, and like it needs to learn now, because it's like starting from scratch, and it's the AI was sophisticated enough, I'm assuming, that it could like develop conscious.
Yeah. That's pretty much what happens is he, like, basically at the beginning, it's like he's like a very young toddler. Like, he can't walk the correct way. He can't like do sharp turns or anything. He can read though, but it's very broken in his reading, I guess. Like, he's not comprehending fully.
Yeah.
And then eventually he escapes through just a series of random happenstance of being pushed onto a trash truck
Some
and getting
hilarious
out
mishaps.
just in time before they realize really that he's getting out. So while Newton and the security guys are all freaking out over the robot being gone, he non-intentionally sneaks out, and as they try to find him, they end up pushing him off a bridge somehow, kind of accidentally launching him off the bridge, which I think was hilarious that they were in those heavily armored trucks, because this is a robot that no longer has its programming but has a laser that can blow up a tank on it. And who knows if it's gonna just randomly use it. Like, you don't give a toddler a laser because
I mean, and
they're gonna randomly use it.
that was the military's response when they found out it was gone. They were like, "There's this robot with a super dangerous weapon out there. Like, it's what if it melts down a bus full of nuns?" And then the Indian guy says, "Well, then you'd have nun soup."
You'd have nun soup.
It's
But
like, nope.
But nope.
So the military's like worry about him potentially being dangerous is well founded. The response is what's the real, like, really, like, we're just gonna go in and nuke it, like essentially he was wanted to destroy it.
Yeah, just nuke it. That's our answer to everything.
And that was a big thing in the 80s.
Until we were really scared about the Cold War. Well, because we were under the Cold War still, and we were just all waiting all around the world to get nuked eventually after seeing the devastation of it.
And I think Steve Guttenberg, to kind of tie it back around, I think he was in that made-for-TV movie The Day After. Was it The Day After?
I
think that's what it was called. Yeah, it was a made-for-TV movie in the 80s that was all about like a fictional, like, this is what would happen if like we went into a nuclear war with Russia.
Like Fallout.
And it basically shows, like the population that wasn't immediately destroyed dying of radiation sickness over a period of time, basically. And yeah, it was pretty traumatic. I think there was an entire episode of The Goldbergs about it, how like everybody became really freaked out by it.
Oh, radiation sickness scares the crap out of me. And I learned about it why did I learn about it in school, in college? I can't remember what class I learned about it in initially. Probably unethical studies or something like that, I imagine.
You know, one of my favorite depictions of radiation sickness is in one of my, I don't know if it's a favorite movie, but I definitely would recommend it to people that are even a little bit curious about this kind of subject matter, called Fat Man and Little Boy, about
Okay.
the Manhattan Project, the creation of
Oh, okay.
the two bombs from World War II. So they had this one character played by John Cusack. Laura Dern's
Uh-huh.
also in it.
Oh,
And he's a fictional character, but almost everything that's being shown in the movie is somewhat factual,
factual.
not
Yeah,
factional.
I was like, I did
Um,
not know if you were trying to say fictional or not.
no, it's a fictional character, but with factual surroundings or events. He's more
Okay.
of an amalgamation of different real people. And there's this one moment when they're doing some experiments on what's called the demon core, which was
Mhm.
this like solid ball of plutonium that they were
Yeah.
was left over from the Manhattan Project. So they were just trying to do some like radiation experiments, and the setup was what you would call very unprofessional, because
Well,
basically they were just kind of using like a very light shielding around it.
well, I think I actually know this. I think this actually happened before we actually knew what radiation poisoning was,
Yeah, this
or
taught
at
us a
least
lot.
that. Yeah, and it's basically it's because I think I watched this on a show. Oh, what is the show? Dark Science, Dark Matters.
Dark Science sounds like the name of a show.
Yeah, well, it's on like the Science Channel or something, but it stars the guy from. I'm blanking on the show.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
No, it was like a sci-fi show not that long ago. Fringe, I think.
Are you talking? Oh, you're talking about Dark Matters.
Yeah, Dark Matters.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, because it starred the dad character from Fringe, and he tells you about the Dark Matters, and he showed that, which I mean I can't remember the details of it, but that during the Manhattan Project we didn't know what radiation poisoning was, so this scientist is just sitting in the room with pure plutonium, and then we quickly find out. But even then we weren't for sure like why it was happening or anything. It was just like you don't learn it can kill you till you learn it can kill you by it killing you. And it's horrifying. It's a horrifying it's like your cells ripping apart inside of you.
Yeah, basically. It's like taking a shotgun blast to your DNA and then just having to live with that for the rest of your short life afterwards.
Yeah, pretty much. And just horrible pain. Another really good, I guess, kind of along the version of fictional yet factual things about like what nuclear fallout looks like or radiation poisoning is losing my voice is the Chernobyl series on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
It is amazing. I never ever want to watch it again because nuclear fallout is one of my
Well,
worst fears.
you know,
But it is such a great show. So
I feel like we did have some understanding, maybe not to the full extent because, it was more modern, but I distinctly remember when Marie Curie was dying of radiation sickness. Yeah, they realized like, oh, like the stuff she was experimenting with was really bad. And to the point where I think in her last days, like she had to be behind like 3 feet of glass or something crazy like that. Like just something where like
yeah,
nobody could eventually come near her because she was just so irradiated.
she was
And even
yeah.
now, her notes and like her personal effects that she had at the time have to be like contained in like lead lined
hmm
like storage units because they're so irradiated. So
Yeah.
radiation's no joke.
So like we kind of knew, but what Marie Curie was working on, like it was radiation, but it wasn't plutonium because
It wasn't
plutonium was the
plutonium.
more pure form of it. And we have
Yeah.
like this idea always that the purer of it, the better it is, or the cleaner it is. It's just not
Yeah, no,
quite true.
no, it's exactly the wrong thing here in this case.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to point out is like in the early 1900s, no, not early 1900s. Yeah, early 1900s, they were dealing with an issue of morphine addiction. And so they decided to purify morphine to make it to like help these people with their addiction, and they basically just created heroin and gave heroin to people thinking it would cure their addiction.
I
And
was like, here you go.
There you go. Here's a more addicting substance. But the whole thought was like, maybe if we purify it more, it'll be less addicting. That's not like the word pure means angelic. Like, no, it's no. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to number 5, who is found by Stephanie Speck. She is an animal caregiver. I thought she was like Dr. Doolittle's niece or something because she had every single animal in her
she had like a
house.
hawk, a skunk,
A raven.
She pet a raccoon on her front porch, and I was like, "Oh, can you do that?" Like,
yes, raccoons. I mean, only if they don't have rabies, but yeah, raccoons can kind of sort of be domesticated. It's not recommended, but they can be nice. I mean, any animal that you're nice to can be nice to you. Like, it's just because. I mean, I actually saw a TikTok where a guy became friends with a raven, and like the raven like flew onto his arm, and it was just, I was so jealous. I was like, I want to be friends with a raven. I love ravens, but she also had a raven on her porch too, but you didn't really get to see it a lot. But she finds number 5 and instantly thinks, I think what any person would instantly think is that she was the chosen one to meet the aliens. So she thinks number 5 is actually an alien coming down to greet her and have her introduce them to the planet Earth as its ambassador, I guess, of sorts. Which instantly made me like her, like, right away. Like, she already loves animals, so, like, she's got good. But, like, the fact that she was like, I am the chosen one just for an alien.
I like her. I think she says something like, I always knew it would be me, or something like that.
Yeah. And she eventually learns how to get number 5 to come into her house. And he keeps on asking for input, so she hands him an encyclopedia. And he reads every single book in her house, and she eventually, just for sanity's sake, shows him the television.
That used to be a thing, by the way. I distinctly remember growing up always seeing infomercials for buying the Encyclopedia Britannica.
I think I actually had the set that she had in my house at one point in time. I was like,
That must have been handed over, or you've had it in your family since the 80s, because that hasn't been a thing in a while now.
I know. It's gone now. I think we finally donated them. I don't know to where. But, like, part of me really wants to still have an encyclopedia set in my house.
Physical
encyclopedia. But man, wasn't it just amazing to get that downloadable encyclopedia for a while where you could just search. It was like before the internet was huge, or before the internet was what the internet is today. But it was like Google, but a Britannica encyclopedia. Like, you could go in and like type in what you wanted to find, and you'd find the encyclopedia.
Yeah, there was before Wikipedia and the internet really took off. I remember seeing computer programs that basically had that, which was kind of revolutionary. I was like, man, this will never take off.
This will never take. Being able to answer something at the tip of your finger is never going to take off.
Yeah, like, there's no money in this. What are people doing?
Oh, wait, advertising. Oh, right. Okay. So, let's see. So the next day, though, she discovers that number 5 is not an alien. He is actually a robot built by the horrible company Nova that she absolutely hates because she's that very stereotypical, like, Oregon person, I think, horrible, like, warmongers, hatred. And she contacts them about number 5 and says, hey, I got him. Is there going to be a reward? Because she needs money for land for her animals. She's about to get kicked out of her house because she is probably not following quite a lot of rules and regulations with the amount of animals that she has in that house.
She's already been visited by someone from the city, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, she's breaking, like, codes or something.
Yeah. Should also mention that she does have a horrible jerk face of a ex-boyfriend as well. He does come into play a little later on, but horrible jerk face of an ex-boyfriend. So as she says this, number 5 learns what death is when he accidentally kills a grasshopper. And number 5 makes a connection that if he goes to Nova, they're going to disassemble him, and therefore he's going to die. And this is the first hint that number 5 is sentient because he has a fear of death. So, which is not something robots would typically have.
No. So that's the first indication that there is something. He is more aware now about what's is going on with him. And yeah, he has his first existential freak out, which I'm like, dude, join the club. That's like
Join the club, right?
Yeah. I was like, no, that it happens.
Yeah.
But tries to get away, causes more trouble. Has a tendency to rip out car seats so that he can drive those cars.
Yeah, it's very hilarious. He can drive. Does almost drive off a cliff, but Stephanie stops that. He does end up, because he almost drives off a cliff, being caught by Nova, and they kind of make the promise that they're not going to disassemble him, but then it's clear that they are going to disassemble him. And during his transport back to Nova, he figures out how to fix himself after getting shot up by Nova security and escape. And does he take the truck that time? Yeah, he takes their truck. He leaves them on the side of the road and just takes the truck and goes back to his Stephanie. So during this time, and because of his strange actions, and I do believe because of what Stephanie says, Newton is trying to convince Nova that number 5 needs to be studied and not damaged, basically, because he's gaining a personality or something, or he's gaining sentience. Now, Newton doesn't quite believe that he's living, but he definitely thinks we can't just destroy him. We got to examine him and figure out what happened here, because this is cool. He's like, this is neat, this is different. He's learning things, he can drive a car, stuff like that. So, and then also within this time you get kind of the hint that Stephanie and Newton might have feelings for each other, kind of. There's a little bit of romance in this film.
It's not a very forced romance.
It is. I don't hate it, but it is forced. And I mainly don't hate it because I like romance. So,
and you like Steve Guttenberg.
And I like Steve Guttenberg, and so.
And you relate to Ali Sheedy a little bit.
Yeah, I do. That's the animal thing, and being very, very protective of a robot that I just met. Definitely something I would do.
And you like R2D2, so you already have an affinity for robots that roll.
Yeah, R2D2. Wally. Honestly, Wally is my favorite robot. But...
yeah. Yeah, so this is really your movie.
This is really my movie. It really was made for me. I really got into it, as you will know when I react to something that happens later on. But, so, Newton kind of sort of goes off on his own thing and kind of sort of almost gets fired by Nova. Actually, pretty much does get fired by Nova, because he doesn't want the security guys to just shoot up number 5. As that's happening, number 5 kind of sort of convinces Stephanie that Newton might be a good guy, and he convinces her to meet up with Newton. But naturally, Nova learns about this meetup, and it's basically a trap. Newton doesn't know about it, but it's a trap. So they meet up and they have a cute little date. Not date, but it's a date. And at a little diner, hotel diner, I guess. I don't know what kind of shindig it is.
It said hotel or motel, some big inn or something. It was weird. It was an inn of some sort.
Yeah, it was really weird. Oh, and then also during the time you get the scene where the jerk face ex-boyfriend tries to get the robot from Stephanie, because there is now a reward if you catch him of $25,000, which is a lot of money in the 80s.
Yes, it was.
Now it's pennies, but
I mean, it'd be a lot of money for me today, but yeah.
I know. I guess it would be a lot of money. It would, because I'm one of the lucky ones that doesn't have a huge student loan. I would be able to pay off my student loan with that. that would be nice. But he fails, and number 5 disassembles his car, and it's great. And that's just a good, funny scene of him like using television lines against the boyfriend and all that. It's a wonderful scene. And
He learned a lot about pop culture.
he
and
did the Three
advertising.
Stooges.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know what? Okay, so that brings me to a little bit of an aside.
Yes.
Growing up, I wasn't really exposed to the Three Stooges, but I had a lot of friends who were. I don't know
See,
if this is a race thing or not, but Three Stooges humor to me never really made sense. I wasn't a real big fan of that particular kind of physical violence or physical comedy. And
slapstick, I think is what it's called. Slapstick comedy.
yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Now, I did like it in cartoons. I was a huge fan of Tom and Jerry, for instance, and
Mhm.
the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. I loved those. Those were great.
Yeah.
But the Three Stooges just never did anything for me. And I was wondering if that was just something wrong with me.
No.
Is it a cultural thing?
It could be a cultural thing. So like slapstick was really popular comedies back in the good days. I have watched Three Stooges. They're not my favorite slapstick. They're like probably my least favorite of the slapstick, which is kind of interesting because I feel like they've defined slapstick with how they are. My favorite, I do like some slapstick. My favorite, and they're still my favorite to this day, is Abbott and Costello.
Okay.
They're the most famous for, if you've ever heard the Who's on First joke.
Yeah.
That's Abbott and Costello. But they did like movies, like they did spoofs of, I feel like you actually would like them. They do spoofs of monster films like The Wolfman and Frankenstein.
I think I've seen them. Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy and things like that. I think I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah, like that's my kind of slapstick, where yes, it has slapstick in it, but it's not the center of the humor.
Yeah, they're more, I think those guys are more like goofballs as opposed to like just constantly hitting each other. And maybe that makes the difference. They're more, I guess, yeah, they're more like clever jokes because, like I say, like the whole "Who's on First" thing, like
yeah, yeah, like it's Who's on First is, if you've never heard the whole Who's on First, go and listen to the whole Who's on First, audience members, because it's a wonderful skit. But I would say like the modern day Abbott and Costello would be like Key and Peele. Would be like, to me, the most comparable to how their skits are. And I'm more thinking of like the skit of the substitute teacher that pronounces the white names wrong.
Yeah, that's a good
like,
one.
it's like that kind of humor, but also slapstick. Yeah, I love Abbott and Costello. Yeah. But yeah, I do agree with you. The Three Stooges never hit right with me. Like, it's funny, but it's funny for like 5 minutes. I can't watch an entire movie of it. Like,
and it's just the same thing over and over again. Granted, there's some Mad Cat stuff that happens, I know, in some other things, like in one of the big ones that they're known for, there's basically like a dinner party that just turns into like a big pie in the face to everybody, basically.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I remember. But it's just that particular humor never really gelled with me. So yeah, watching that in this, but it's weird because it feels like they have influenced a lot of people, a lot of works, and they get referenced a lot. I mean, we even had a Three Stooges movie not too long ago that I remember watching, and I remember thinking, this is kind of funny, but it still didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah. So. I mean, I feel like they kind of suffer from the idea that they are straight up just slapstick humor. Like, they kind of, I don't know. I don't want to call them the inventor of it, because I don't know if there was anybody before that was really great at slapstick humor, because it's just not something I've researched. But I feel like they're so iconic at it that they're too iconic, and that other people have done it better since them, kind of thing. I think that's why they seem cheaper now. I'm sure at the time they were hilarious, but at the time we were fairly, I don't want to say we were violent, but we were fairly entertained by violence at the time.
I guess so. We're more tolerant to it, I suppose.
It's weird because it's not like, Because at the time, like, everything was fairly what I would describe as violent. Like, cartoons were super violent, and slapstick humor was super violent and super abusive towards people. But nowadays we have shows like Game of Thrones, which shows blood and all that, but it still, to me, almost feels less violent, and I don't know why.
Probably the intent. A lot of those were very mean-spirited, like
Yeah,
hitting each other.
it was just bullying. That's what it is. Like, slapstick humor is very much like bullying your friends, though, because they're like, are they friends or are they brothers? I can't remember, but which to me is like, okay, but like Daenerys burning down an entire like crowd of people, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. They're horrible people. Like, they're not her friends, but I guess. Wait, are we supposed to not talk about Game of Thrones anymore after that last season? I can't remember. But anyway.
Well, it's going to come back, and we're probably going to watch that new version too, so.
Definitely. Yeah, you can, in the future, you could probably hear our thoughts on it on our other podcast, Geeks Watch, which comes out every Sunday.
Yeah.
If we're not super busy. But generally every Sunday. We're actually pretty good at doing Geeks Watch. So number 5 learns that the meeting with Crosby and, well, Newton is what I've been calling him, but his actual name is Crosby. I just like the name Newton more than Crosby. That Newton and Stephanie's little date meetup thing is a trap when he finds the other Saint robots after him, and he captures them, turns them off, and reprograms them into the Three Stooges, which is great and hilarious. Especially when you get the eyeball out popping scene from one of them.
Now, at this point, I do also want to mention the robotics in the movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, as a kid, I was fascinated by robots. I mean, because what kid isn't?
Yeah, it's true.
And I love the beginning of the movie when they show you the robot being assembled, because it's like you're seeing the actual technology, and it probably was a lot of the real working components that they used for these, because these were obviously remote controlled. But practical...
I'm just going to add in, they also were the most expensive part of the film. In fact, the rest of the film was pretty cheap, other than the robots, especially number 5. Yeah.
Because all of this was made from scratch from the looks of it. I mean, aside from the stuff you can get off the shelf, like motors and stuff, I mean, everything else had to be programmed and whatever. So there was definitely a lot of craftsmanship and engineering that had to go into these basically movie props. And I've always found that part fascinating. In fact, this movie and another kind of robot movie called Batteries Not Included.
Okay.
And I think technically also Ghostbusters. They really are like the 3 fundamental movies that made me want to get interested in prop making in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because there was a short time where I thought, hey, maybe I could work in Hollywood and make movies, because I love movies. And I've always been fascinated by the art of making them. And I was like, well, what could I do? I'm not really an actor. I don't know if I could direct a movie just from what I saw. And this was me being a little kid, by the way. But I've seen enough to see like the stereotypical director like throwing his megaphone angrily at the ground when things aren't going his way or whatever. I was like, I don't know if I have the temperament for that. But I remember seeing they used to have a show on Discovery Channel called I think it was Behind the Magic or something like that. And they talked a lot about behind the scenes work of like props and special effects. ILM was featured a lot in these these shows. So I got to see a lot of how they made Star Wars, for instance, and I got to know a lot of the behind the scenes names like Stan Winston, Dennis Muren, John Dykstra, like all these masters of, which, side note, the robot was created or designed by Sid Mead.
Yep.
Who was the, I think, production designer on Blade Runner and a few other famous movies. Tron, yes, thank you. So, yeah, that particular, the robotics just look so functional in a realistic way. And everything seems to make sense. And that's one of the most tricky things to do with something like this, because in most cases, like, let's go back to the olden days of like Forbidden Planet or Lost in Space. And you have a robot that's essentially just a giant, like, oil drum with like a glass fishbowl on its head, and there's
like-
clearly somebody inside that's waving its arms around.
Yeah, and the arms are like the little tubes that
Yeah.
are on your dryer vent.
Yeah. Or for any British fans that might be listening to this, Daleks, it's basically an upside down garbage can with a plunger for an arm.
I mean, it's a very evil upside down garbage can, but yeah.
Yes. So the fact that this was very functional, 100% practical,
It's amazing. Yeah.
and it was expressive too. Like they talk about in some of the behind the scenes stuff I've seen for this movie, I think also possibly on that show I was talking about, how the way that they nailed him, Johnny Five or the robots, was by giving him those extra shutters for the eyes.
Yeah.
Because that suddenly gave him eyebrows, and now he could squint. He could do like an angry, look. Make his eyes really narrow.
He can pick up a tool with him.
Yeah, they were functional
power
too.
himself on. It was cool.
He can make himself look sad, all that stuff. Yeah, and that's just from the eyebrows. That was the secret to that. And giving him the little camera shutters was cool because then he looks like his pupils were dilated when he's like in curiosity mode. He's like big doe eyes like Wally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that more than anything, my biggest takeaway from the movie, like I didn't really care too much for the love story. I'll say that, being a little kid, boy and all that is like, ew, whatever. But the robots were fascinating. And especially more with part 2, where they have the little toy robots of Johnny Five.
Aww.
Yeah, there's a whole subplot. Now, interesting thing to note about the sequel, Short Circuit 2. There's a thing I'm working on. Little sneak preview here.
Ooh.
But I'm writing an article about, and I still need to finish my last article. It's like way overdue. But I'm writing an article about movie sequels that only featured one side character from the original. And Short Circuit 2, it fits exactly that. It only has
Ben, right?
Fisher Stevens, as Ben.
The not Indian.
Yeah. Technically Johnny Five, but I mean, I don't like. I'm going to stretch it to be like, okay, this is not really an actor. It's just like a character. But only one actor from the original movie comes back in the actual movie. Another one would be Van Wilder 2, The Rise of Taj.
Okay.
Also has an Indian actor, except this one's real.
That's nice.
There's a whole list of these movies that I found fascinating. I was just thinking about this for one reason or another. And I was like, wait,
That's
are there
interesting.
any other sequels where only like one person came back and it wasn't even a main character? Yes, there are several.
Yeah.
So there'd be something about that coming out, hopefully,
I feel like
before
I
the
know
year's
one,
over.
but I can't think of it.
Oh, probably. There's tons. There's a bunch of these. I think Grease 2 only had Frenchie in it.
That's what it is. Grease 2. That's exactly what I was thinking of. It's like, I know there's a musical one. Only Frenchie is in that.
There's some really weird ones like that where it's like, why would they even make a sequel? Like, why would they bring this one person back just to tie it to the original? Pretty much, yeah. That's why they do it in some cases.
Pretty much. So where are we at? Okay, so number 5 makes him act like Three Stooges. He escapes and he saves Stephanie. But he still decides that Newton's going to have to be trusted. So they need to get Newton fully on their side, even though Stephanie thinks that Newton was the reason why that place was a trap. It wasn't his fault, but she's going to think that. So, number 5 captures Newton and takes him back to Stephanie, and they're just out in the desert somewhere. I don't even know where they are at this point.
I know where this is.
Where is this? Because this set looked really familiar.
Yes, this has been in several movies and TV shows. It's it's one of my favorite locations just because of how overused it is, but it just never gets old.
I feel like I just saw it in Zoe's Infinite playlist, or a set like it at least.
It might very well be. So this is a location in California.
Mm-hmm.
It is known as Vasquez Rocks Natural Area Park.
Okay.
And this is probably the most famous for having been in Star Trek, the original series.
Okay.
This is where Captain Kirk fights the Gorn, that lizard-looking monster.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And it's famous because it has those rocks that kind of go up at a sharp angle. and then like kind
Yeah.
of just stick there, and it looks very kind of foreign and alien. And it's a place in LA, just kind of out there that just happens to look like that. And
Hmm.
it was also in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. That's where the
Mm.
two more robots. The two robots from the future that come in to kill them, take them to Vasquez Rocks and throw them off the top. Which,
Yeah.
side note, in that same movie, they watched that episode of Star Trek where the Vasquez Rocks are featured and Captain Kirk is fighting the alien.
All right.
So it all kind of ties in together. It's I think most recently it was also in Star Trek Picard. As again a meta reference to the original series, he goes there to that particular location and visits somebody that's living in some kind of house or hut out in the middle of nowhere, and it happens to be like in that place.
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
That place has been in so many different things.
So many sets.
I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer filmed something in there once.
Blazing Saddles, The Muppets, Dante's Peak, Amazon Woman on the Moon.
The Angry
Amazon
Video
Women on
Game
the Moon.
Nerd.
Hail Caesar, The Fugitive, The A-Team, MacGyver. A lot of things. So many things.
Yep. It's just one of those places that's in LA that it's like, why not go out there and do something there? Because it's such a crazy looking location, and it's just right outside the city limits, basically.
Wow. That's crazy. It's very pretty too. So, but anyway, they are here, which I forgot, and you mentioning like all these other things that there was a film in this featured Saturday Night Live
Fever.
Or Saturday Night Fever. Oh my gosh, Saturday Night Fever. And number 5 dances to scenes of it, and then he dances with Stephanie, and I completely bypassed that weird and awkward the robot is falling in love with the human scene. But
and she's going for it, or at the very least she's leading him on.
But it's not even leading him on, it's just more like, you who doesn't want to dance with a friend?
I guess.
Why does dancing have to be so sexual? But anyway.
Well, I mean, I'm not jumping to that conclusion either.
I know, but like, it's just. Well, you say leading him on, like, what is the next step, John?
I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah, there you go. So
input.
So we did for sure. Yeah, that was a really awkward scene. Like, I don't know,
but it's my favorite Bee Gees song that they dance to. So
it is a great song. It is a wonderful song to dance to. I will give you that. So anyway, they're back on the rock, and this is where Newton decides to basically do his experiment to try to prove that. Well, I think he's actually trying to prove that he's not alive at first, but he's so impressed. And he does this in like some of my favorite ways. And although we're not like done with this, normally we do the question of the podcast after we finish the plot. But my question for this podcast is, what do you consider being sentient, being alive? And I feel like this is probably a question you've had before, because I know you and Mitch argue over this.
Oh, yeah. He says nothing can be sentient if it's not a person.
See, that is so... So he doesn't think dogs are sentient?
As far as consciousness is concerned, I don't think so. I think it's... I don't know. We should definitely bring him on and have this sentience conversation.
Let's have the sentient conversation.
Because yes, we have had several disagreements where it's like, if something is programmed, then that's all it is. It's just programmed, which is what they say in the movie.
Okay, if you're going to say that, though, then humans are also programmed, by the way. Yeah. We're all just brain waves. Literally, a little electron. We work the same as a computer does. Like, I think, and that's where you have to define where sentience is. What makes humans alive, but a piece of bread not? Like, it's just...
I think it all comes down to his fear of animatronics. I think he just doesn't want to give them the consciousness, because that humanizes them. So when it's time to destroy them, he doesn't want to think of them as...
But now here's the thing, and this this movie, I think, does an excellent definition of what actual sentience might be. I do not think this movie makes me think any of the Disney animatronics are alive, no matter how amazing they make them. Even the new Spider-Man one that can do a flip and land, I don't think that thing's alive. I do think that if this movie was real life, I would consider number 5 alive.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the reason why is because number 5 exhibits curiosity
Like, that's
and the desire to learn, and basically applies what it learns.
Yeah.
It goes beyond any original programming and actually, does things on its own creatively. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't have to turn the other robots into Three Stooges,
Yeah.
but it did so, and it did so very well.
Mhm.
So he's able to apply what he learns, like, with imagination.
Yeah. And I don't even think it's exactly just imagination. So to me, the proof is exactly what Newton describes at the proof, is when Newton just tells a joke, not even a great joke. And he doesn't say it because my dad thought, when we saw the scene, my dad thought it was a cheat because he thought Newton said, I'm going to tell you a joke. But he doesn't say that. He just straight up goes into the story of, I can't remember, a priest and a rabbi, one of those kinds of jokes. And he just straight up tells it and waits for number 5 to react. And number 5's reaction after hearing the story and thinking about it is to laugh. He wasn't told it was funny. He wasn't told to laugh. He didn't know what it fully meant, but he still realized that it was humorous. And therefore he got to that conclusion with imagination, curiosity, and without programming too. Because the programming would have been if Newton said, I'm going to tell you something funny. Then he is just reacting how he's supposed to react as he is programmed to react. Newton didn't say that. I was going to call him short circuit. Number 5 came to that conclusion on his own to not even a great joke and realized it was funny. So that, like, humor, that probably is what sentient is to me. If you can find humor in life, that's sentience.
Yeah, and I think the clearest example of that is when he chooses to insult one of the robots by telling them that his mother was a snowblower.
Yeah.
Even as a child, I thought that was like, whoa, dude.
Snowblower. What was that? Like, that was hilarious. And that is what convinces Newton that, yes, number 5 is alive. He needs to be protected at all costs. And that is, of course, naturally when Nova arrives with their Hueys to bomb number 5. And number 5 does the thing that made me very upset at first. I was literally like, this is not what's happening, right? So he leaps, like, Newton and Stephanie get taken by Nova security. They get pulled away from the van, leaving just number 5 in it. And he goes out, I was going to say guns a-blazing, but he just kind of runs out and does a mad dash. He's getting shot at, but he can go 30 miles per hour. So he's beating their bullets. And then a helicopter comes out of nowhere and just, like, bombs him. And he dies. And I was literally like, what? I think I turned to my parents and I was like, wait a minute. Like, what am I watching? Because it was very dramatic. And I was very much like, is this real life? Like, what happened? Is this, like... I was sad. And then literally, like, not even 5 minutes, but before the big reveal, I turned to my dad and I was like, he made himself another robot. My dad's like, what? I was like, he had all the parts of robots in that van. Like, he made a decoy. And, like, a minute after I said that, they revealed, oh, he's in the van. I was like, ha! I was so happy.
Now, yeah, you have the advantage of seeing this with the more adult brain. 6-year-old John thought that he was, like, obliterated.
He's dead.
And I was like, what? They can't do that.
No. This would have been 6-year-old me, John. Like, I was this much of an optimist at 6 years old that I literally turned to my 6-year-old self. Okay, 8-year-old self. I turned into my 8-year-old self where I was like, the robot died. Like, this is like, what do you mean he dies? I looked at my mom. I was like, "You said this was a good movie. Like, you like this movie?" And I was finally like, like I was like a child, like, "Oh, I know what he did. Like, he made a new robot. Like, that's the answer. Because if it's not, I'm gonna cry." Like,
No, my takeaway was, nope, the robot was right. Death comes for us all. Disassemble is inevitable.
that's a very depressing thought for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I was a very depressive kid. There's a reason why my nickname was Mopey for like 10 years.
Mopey?
Yes, Mopey.
Oh.
There's a whole group of people that still call me that, even though I haven't seen them in forever. They still remember me as Mopey.
I mean, do you like being called Mopey?
No.
Okay, all right.
Name of choice.
Okay, I was like, some people end up liking their weird nicknames, but okay,
No,
I'm sorry then.
This is not a cool nickname. However, it's a stupid anecdote. I'm gonna move on from that.
Okay,
and
however,
instead say, yes, Johnny Five is alive.
Johnny Five is alive. He pops up from the bottom of the thing, explains that he made a decoy robot, and Newton says to Stephanie that he's got 40 acres of land in Montana, and he's going to take now Johnny Five there, because number 5
Along
decides
with
that
Stephanie and all her
wants a name.
animals.
And along with Stephanie and all, because first Stephanie was like, well, what about my animals? And I'm like, girl, 40 acres. Like, come on.
See, that's
You
the
got
only
it
part.
covered.
This is the only part where I'm like, okay, you guys just met, and okay, I'll buy that maybe there's some kind of initial attraction. You don't just say, hey, let's move in together in my secluded ranch in the middle of nowhere. Like, that's some serial killer stuff right there.
Yeah, not in the 80s. But
No,
we didn't know what serial killers were in the 80s. Or no, we were just starting to learn what they were. Really.
The 70s
like,
were still kind of leaving us in shell shock.
yeah, because like it wasn't until the 90s that they did, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Kind of things.
Yeah.
So,
no, my parents didn't care at that time. It was like, hey, if the lights are off, then you should be inside.
You should be inside. Yep. But yeah, Stephanie, it's a happy ending. Stephanie agrees to go with him, even though it's crazy. And number 5 asserts that his name should be Johnny Five, based off of the song that he heard earlier on the radio, Who's Johnny?
Which is a song about him, because it's all about
a song about him.
Trying to show that you're alive.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, there's Short Circuit. Although I do like some romance, I will say the romance does cheapen this story quite a bit. Like, this could have been a really not complex, like it could have been a really good story about what is sentience. And instead it's kind of like plays the line of going there, but then doesn't.
See, this time around, I was more curious about why Stephanie had such bad taste in men, because apparently the guy that she was with at the beginning isn't the only jerkwad to be just completely disrespecting her left and right. Apparently, there's been a whole string of them.
Here's the thing. Like, a lot of men, especially in the 80s, were jerks, because that's what society told them they could be. Because they have instilled privilege, especially if there's a lot of white men.
Here's the other part of that problem, though. I could see clearly that Stephanie is a nurturer and she likes to take care of things, especially broken things.
Yeah,
I bet you she gravitated towards damaged men and then let them walk all over her. I
do absolutely agree with that. Like, Stephanie definitely is the type to be that woman that will say, but I can change him. And honey, no, like, you can't. Just
stick to the like loose animals out there.
Yeah, stick to the animals. We don't need men anymore.
This is true. There's some remarkable advances in technology, and I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk is trying to get in on that market.
Life finds a way.
Said by the most beefiest that Jeff Goldblum ever was.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. After you said your little nickname story, I figured I could share the nickname that I got that I hated in middle school because I wore a Billabong hoodie. I was called Bill's Bong because apparently one of my friends had a friend named Bill and he had a bong. So that was my middle school nickname that I hated.
became Billabong.
Bill's Bong.
Bill's Bong.
Or Billabong. But because I wore a green Billabong hoodie for like 2 years, and I think I washed it like 3 times. Just kidding, I washed it more than that because my mom would have been horrified, so she would steal it and wash it.
So, on the topic of unwanted nicknames, one of my nicknames in I think 4th grade was Bat Freak.
Now Batman Bat Freak or like
Yes.
bats? Okay, boring.
So the reason being is that the 1989 Batman movie came out and I loved it. I thought it was great.
The 89 one is the one with Penguin, right?
No, that was the one with the Joker.
The Joker.
Penguin, I think, was 91, 92. So that first movie came out. It was a huge hit. That was right around the time where I found out I needed to wear glasses. So I went to the optometrist. They said pick out some frames. I found some frames that looked kind of cool. And they had a little on the demo glass that they have, which obviously didn't have a prescription. It had a little Batman symbol on it. And I was like, oh, these are cool. They have like a Batman symbol on it. They called to me. I'm like, these are the glasses, So I said, okay, let's get these. Now, keep in mind, I needed glasses, so I wasn't seeing things very clearly. When I got them back, people started calling me, hey, Batman, or Batboy, which eventually became Bat Freak. Yes.
Bat Freak.
I was like, why is everybody calling me Bat Freak all of a sudden? And then somebody pointed out, well, it's because you have Batman on your glasses. I was like, I do? Where? Because that Batman logo was only on the demo. Yes, I couldn't see the Batman logo. They were on the hinges of the glasses. There was a gold Batman symbol on each side.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't realize that. And it wasn't until somebody pointed it out, and I had to kind of like really squint at it, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Because it's not like you could even get the right angle to see it while you're wearing them.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Oh, gosh.
Like even in a mirror, no. Like I had to kind of like really put it up to my face to kind of like, I was like, oh.
You should have sued the company and be like, my eyes are too blind to see the detail.
For all my mental anguish. Now, similar to that, a little bit older. Now we're in freshman year of high school. Yeah, freshman year of high school. So this was right around the time that the game Star Fox had come out on Super Nintendo. Yeah. And I love Star Fox. That game blew my mind when it came out. And they had this promotional where you can get a Star Fox Game Watch. Game watches started to become like a big thing back then because it was like, oh my God, I'm playing a video game on my watch. Yep, it was like cheap LEDs, but still whatever. So you could only get the Star Fox one, as far as I knew, from the cereal. Like you had to buy like 6 boxes of whatever it was at the time, send in the proofs of purchase, and you'd get a watch. One of my friends did that. Daniel, who's also been on the Geeks Watch before, not the Geeks Watch. Yeah, he was on the Geeks Watch. He did the overtime with us on Black Widow. He did it, and he got like 6 of them in the mail by accident. The machine must have messed up or something. I was like, oh, dude, awesome. Lucky. So I sent mine. I only got one. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So this was like towards the end of 8th grade when this happened. So come freshman year of high school, I'm still wearing my Star Fox watch because why not? It's fun. It tells the time. I can play Star Fox in a very limited way. Well, I don't have any problems with it until I start taking woodshop. And there's a lot of meatheads in woodshop. There's a lot of gang members, and there's a lot of like football players in this class. This is the class that people take just to get an easy A, apparently. I thought, hey, I'm going to learn how to make a birdhouse or a cutting board or something. So everybody immediately gravitates, and I realized that high school is a lot like prison. Like people like to find your weakness and exploit it. Yes. And take advantage of you in any way they can. Like right underneath like the superior's like watch. Yeah. And so I became Star Fox in that class. And
you went from Bat Freak to Star Fox.
Well, at that point, I didn't have the Batman glasses anymore. Okay. I think I sanded them off. I got like a file and I just like shaved it off till you couldn't see it anymore. because it wasn't like a part of the frame like painted on or anything. It was like an actual like embellishment
Oh, okay.
that was like glued on to the frame. That's why it
Huh.
made it even worse. It looked like cheap jewelry or something.
Oh.
So yeah, I meant that stigma of Bat Freak still stayed with me though, and like this is when it was not cool to be a nerd, guys. Like that's one thing you have to remember. There was a very
Yeah.
long time where being a nerd or a geek or having any kind of fandom was a reason to be ostracized in high school or in regular school. So
Yeah.
the Star Fox watch caused so much controversy
Mhm.
because everybody was like, dude, you're in high school, like that's little kid shit, like basically it's like you need to grow up. And I'm like, dude, I like it, why should I?
Why do I need to grow up?
Yeah. So just like people in social situations look for any reason to, like, I don't know, I think it's instinctual. I have this theory that bullying is part of our natural primitive system, in that we try to weed out the weaklings to keep the tribe strong. Obviously, we don't need to do that anymore because we're supposed to be a civilized society. But I
It's
just think it's something that's hardwired into our brains to try to find what is the weakness in our collective and try
it's
to get it out because we
it's
don't want that.
it's maybe that, but I honestly think it's more, especially nowadays, it's more um not wanting to deal with your own weakness, so you exploit the weakness of others.
I
Is
could see
actually
that
what
too.
it is. It's more your insecurities and you put them on other people. Like those
That
kids
explains.
probably thought that your watch was something that they wish they had. Like they wish they actually got all the why voice? They wish they got all the box tops, but they never did, or they didn't buy that cereal band or whatever, and they were like jealous of you for being able to have one. But they're not going to say that because they're in high school now and they got to be cool, and
Yeah.
you know,
It
or
caused a lot of problems though, because eventually when they saw that it wasn't bothering me, because I was always told like don't encourage bullies, just ignore them and they'll leave you
yeah,
alone. So I would. No, it made them angrier.
yeah.
Like they started messing with my projects. They started messing with my friends. At
Mhm.
one point, um, I was looking down at something on the table and I heard a loud whack. And then the guy sitting in front of me, across from me, said, "Ow." And I was like, I looked up and there was this like 6 to 8 inch piece of wood that
Ah.
somebody had thrown from across the room, trying to hit me in the back of the head.
Oh my
And it
god.
and it curved and it hit the guy in front of me in the forehead. And he had this like perfect right angle, like bruise and
Oh.
bump on his forehead. And like the teacher was like, I didn't see anything. Yeah, he was a big supporter of the jocks. That guy was like, I mean,
Oh.
if you can't handle it
I'm
here, you
sorry.
can always drop the class. Basically,
I'm
it's
so
like,
sorry.
we don't have room for weaklings.
That's
Well,
horrible.
that's just one of many fun
Yeah.
stories from
Yeah.
our youth here. But
Uh,
yeah, there's just interesting dynamic that happens in social situations and gatherings, and
yes.
this has absolutely nothing to do with Short Circuit, but it's an interesting sidetrack into nicknames that people get.
Yeah. A very interesting sidetrack. I would like to note the whole ignoring bully thing obviously actually does not work. It will just aggravate them more, especially, well, it kind of depends on the reason why they're bullying you. If they're bullying you because of their insecurities, you are just going to anger them because they are expecting you to react this way and not.
Yeah, they
But
see it as disrespect, which is even worse,
yes.
apparently.
But I will note that, I mean, and I especially like, I only work with early childhood children, but so like not necessarily high schoolers. I still have to learn a little bit about how high schoolers work, because I could work with like school age kids, but I will note that the new change and that is like any bad behavior is actually a cry out for help. So, and that's what you need to do. People who bully, people who get bullied, they need to be helped. They shouldn't just be written off as they're bad or they're good. It's everybody needs a bit of help
So
sometimes. And thank gosh
what
we're
I
not in
should
that
have
world anymore. But
what I should have done is I should have gifted every one of those bullies their own Star Fox watch and told them it's okay.
no, not necessarily that. I would like to know it is not a child's job to help another child. And yes, high schoolers are still children. So it is that teacher that should have stepped up and done something. But anyway,
I
that
remember
is
hearing the
neither
same.
here nor there.
he had the same name as Keanu Reeves' character from Speed. It was Jack something. I can't remember what it was, but everybody used to say, "Hey, you were in Speed, or you were the inspiration for Speed, weren't you?"
Oh gosh.
And he would just go along with it. Yeah, I can't remember what the
Aw.
last name was, but that's the only part of it that sticks to my mind. I think, like I said, that teacher was probably a bully growing up too, because he definitely took the side of the bullies.
Yeah. I will say I do have faith in the upcoming generations that they're a lot better at recognizing their emotions because we're teaching it at an earlier age. Bullying is always going to exist. It's always going to exist, but I think they'll handle things better, or they'll bully about things that are even worse. But anyway, okay, we got very personal on this podcast.
Yeah, Short Circuit, definitely a gem. It has been remade. It's called Chappie. Same thing.
Oh, I haven't seen Chappie yet. I need to see Chappie.
Yeah, basically, robot becomes sentient.
Is it happy too?
Mm.
Oh, I don't like that face.
Well, it's from the director of District 9. So if you think District 9 has a happy or at least hopeful ending, then you'll might take a positive.
I will say it has a hopeful ending, but I am
Okay.
really sad for the dude in District 9 at the end. But I'm like,
Yeah.
at least he's picking. Doesn't he pick a flower at the? I don't even know. It's been a while. That was a good movie. Okay.
Yeah. And we don't need to come up with the drink because this movie has one. It's a gin and tonic with a twist of lime, shaken and not stirred.
Well, a gin and tonic should have lime in it, but but yes, that is the drink for it. Kind of want a gin and tonic right now. That actually was one of the drinks I would drink every once in a while when I went to bars until I discovered my love of whiskey over gin.
Mhm.
So there we go. I do also agree that this is a gem. It is not the best gem. It definitely could be improved. I would say it. I mean, Chappie already exists. You're right. Yep, Chappie already exists. I need to see Chappie if it is an actual good retelling of Short Circuit. Although I'll trust you on that.
It's, in spirit, it's this very similar. It's the plot details are different, but it's very well made movie. That director does special effects really excellently, and he's voiced by the same guy who was the lead in District 9. So if you like Charlton Copley is his name.
I like his voice.
Yeah, that's pretty much him. He sounds he does sort of like an almost childlike voice though. He's like he calls one of the characters daddy, but he says it in like his slightly Southern African accent. So it's like, hey daddy. Like it sounds really funny.
That's cute. So yeah, let's see what's another thing we ask. Yeah, definitely a gem. Kind of already been redone. I don't think would be redone very well as it is. Like the military presence in it. Like I don't think I could see this happening nowadays. Like a perfect redo of it.
Yeah, that type of military portrayal is not in the zeitgeist right now.
Yeah.
But the most important question is, does this movie Star Wars?
I was going to say, does it Star Wars? I didn't catch a lot of things. Did you catch anything?
I didn't see any overt references to anything here.
Okay.
Maybe potentially something hidden in there, but you would think.
I mean, it has lasers.
Like yeah, but Star Wars doesn't really have lasers. They have laser bolts and they have lightsabers, but neither really fall into the category of lasers because a laser beam would be something different. Not until Attack of the Clones do you actually have real lasers, interestingly enough.
Yeah, on the clone walker, so not the AT-AT, but like the clone version of the AT-AT,
the one that came
they
before,
do have that laser turret thing on them, like, and I can't remember what that turret was called, even though I quite often used it on Star Wars Battlefront,
yeah.
too. Like,
that's a cool weapon.
That was a cool weapon.
Yeah.
Just like, I was really good with a sniper on those games, though.
But yeah, I want to say for a late 80s sci-fi movie featuring robots, not even a reference to R2-D2, which I thought they would have done because I've seen that in other movies, is where they referenced a random robot. They'll call him like R2D2 or something. I've seen that before. So
Yeah.
No.
So it does not Star Wars.
it does not Star Wars. Does not pass the Star Wars test.
Yeah, one of the few of the 80s movies we've watched that did not Star Wars. All right, so let's see. If anyone wants to talk to you about, well, maybe if anyone out there did notice if it's Star Wars, where can they reach you at, John?
You can talk to me about all things Star Wars and childhood trauma and bullying on Twitter. I am at Magic Bollocks.
And if you wanted to talk to me about being named after drug devices,
Paraphernalia.
drug paraphernalia, you can contact me on Twitter as at JMBaileyWrites. Archives of this podcast and other podcasts that we are in, you can find on our website, geekelitemedia.com. You can also find us as at Geek Elite Media on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook.com/Geek Elite Media. We do also have a Patreon page. So if you have a couple bucks that you would like to share, you can get exclusive access to some fun conversations we occasionally have about just random side story things. Like what was it? If you had a version of Thor's hammer where you had an item that would always come back to you, what would that be? I think that was an exclusive on our Patreon.
It was. I remember that one. I was on that one.
Yeah, I was on that one. It was a good one. So we have funny stuff like that.
We still haven't seen the Muppet Avengers, though.
Yes, we are holding on for the Muppets Avengers. If you listen to our Journey into Mystery podcast with Mitch and Ian and always a random guest, you should know about the Muppet Avengers joke going on with that one. But yeah, you can find those on our Patreon page, Geek Elite Media. As always, wherever you're listening to this, please be sure to click the subscribe button, like it. If you're on YouTube, comment on it. Yeah, just do all those things. It's really great. It ups our algorithms and it gets our podcast out there to more people, and we will forever love you. What? It's a lot of stuff to say, John. Don't do a podcast after you work 10 hours. That would be my biggest suggestion to people out there. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. You guys are the best.
Wow.
Always remember to geek out. Oh my gosh, where did that go?
This concludes our broadcast.